Hey, what's up everybody, Nexel here. Today we are playing Star Ocean Anamnesis, and I'm going to go over a battle tutorial guide where I talk about a lot of the aspects of battle, which is probably the most important part of this game is the actual battle system. So what we're going to do is I'm going to tell you about all the buttons on the regular battle screen, then we're going to go into roles or job classifications and what they mean. Then I'll go over into information you should be reviewing before you go into a boss battle or any sort of battle in general. Next, we'll be talking about Elemental Break, why it's so important, and how to achieve Elemental Break easier. Then we'll talk about Rush Order, or based on the character that you're playing, knowing where you fit in the rush pattern. And then finally, we'll be talking about assist characters and which assist character is going to help your character the best. So this is our battle screen here. We're going to go ahead and start on the top left, and then we're just going to essentially go down the left side, then the right side. So starting from the top left, you've got the menu button here. Now it looks a little different in the battle simulator. In a regular mission, you only get the option to leave the mission and then to leave the menu. So those are the only two options, but in the battle simulator, it gives you a bit more in case you want to try out different things. The next thing is that on the left side, so the glowing button here, this is going to be your assist character. Now when you have an assist character equipped, you activate their special talent by holding on to the assist button. So if we get off of there, it starts by flashing yellow a little bit, but once it starts flashing blue and then you release it, it activates that assist character's ability. The next thing is going to be on the bottom left, so it displays all the characters that are in the party right now, as well as their rush values. Once the character is glowing, it means that their rush is active, and you could just essentially tap on the rush button in order to activate the rush. Keep in mind though, if you are doing multiplayer, you only have access to characters that you are hosting. So it doesn't show it here because clearly I'm the only player in the battle simulator, but every character that has the word host under it, if you are the host of the party, then you have access to pushing those rush buttons. However, if you're not the host, if you're just a guest, you really only have access to pressing your own rush button. The next thing is going to be, so moving to the top right of the screen is the target switcher. So essentially, there's no other targets aside from the big Koro in the middle there, but pressing left or right on that little target button there changes the enemy you're targeting. The next thing is going to be this little button here that says order. Now order is something new to JP that they didn't have in global. It's essentially as you do attacks or as you add certain characters into the party, this order bar goes up. Now there's three different options for the order bar here. The first thing is that you can have invincible. So when you hover over the screen, so here, let me just show you. So I'm hovering over it right now. So pressing invincible makes your characters invincible for a set amount of time. They're not going to be sustaining damage, however, they can still be flinched. So let's just say you're doing an attack, the enemy hits you, you're not going to take any damage, but you still can get knocked back. It's really just a way of preparing yourself against like ultimate attacks that can't be avoided. You don't have any rush in order to cancel them. So you're going to want to use that invincible button for situations like that because it only lasts about 2 seconds. So it's a very short time frame. You're going to want to be able to time it correctly so that you don't get hit. The next one, the blue one, is going to be the bunker button. So what this button does is that as you stack a hit combo, it shows the hit combo on the top right here. So let's hit this enemy a few times, and you can see that that hit counter showed up there. Essentially what that hit counter does with the bunker order is that once you have a hit count going, the bunker order is going to deal additional damage based on how many hits the enemy has. So if we leave it like this, if we just let the bunker order go down, I think it only has like base damage of like 50,000 or something like that, that scales up with every 50 hits that you do. So if we just leave it as it is, oh, it does nothing actually. So yeah, the bunker damage goes up the more hits you have on the enemy. So let's go ahead and press this third button. This maxes our order out. Now let's do the bunker again, except this time let's stack some hits. So let's actually put some hit counter on there, and then I'll show you what I mean. So we're at 50. Let's stop hitting it here. And there, you can see that it did way more damage when that hit counter went up. So bunker works when you have a super high hit counter. You want to squeeze a lot of extra damage. You just activate the bunker when there's a high hit combo, and then at the end of the bunker order, it's going to deal massive damage to the enemy. The last one, which I'd argue is actually the most important one, is going to be this heat up bonus. Now, heat up bonus is a very interesting order that actually deals more damage during the rush the lower the counter goes down. So let's do the heat up order now. and then you can see there's a timer that shows up. The lower that number is before you press rush, the better the damage comes out. So let's say, for example, let's restart this. Okay. So it does nothing if you miss. You gotta make sure you hit it at the lowest possible number. But let's just say we hit it at the earliest possible one. So like right now, let's just do all these rushes. And you can see it gave me a heat up bonus of 30%. So normally it only does rush combo bonus plus 100%, but because we had the heat up going, it added an additional 30%. Now once these rush combo finishes, or once these rush combos finish, we're gonna do this again, except we're gonna have it be pretty much less than 0.5 of a second, and I'm gonna show you how much more damage it's gonna do. Heat up order is very, very important, especially where you're in big groups of people, because you can deal massive amounts of damage just by timing your heat up order correctly. So let's let this run. Okay, so we did about 10 million points of damage, right? So let's get everyone's rush back up. All right, now we're gonna do the heat up order, but we're gonna wait until it's like less than a second left. So we just run down the timer. You can do whatever, you can stack up damage, whatever you need to do. And then when it's less than a second, you're going to want to activate all these. And as you can see, as opposed to the 30% bonus that we got just by activating it right away and then rushing right after, we got an additional 120% bonus because we got it pretty much right before the counter went away. So it's important to use your heat up order correctly because you can squeeze out, again, massive amounts of damage. So we did about 10 million damage with the first rush order, or with the first heat up order that was done like right away. Now let's see how much damage we can do when it's not right away. When you actually wait out the time, we got a 420% bonus going on. That's really good. And so as you can see, we did 30,000 damage or I'm sorry, 30 million? Was it 30 million, 30 billion? I don't know, but we did 3 times more damage just by timing our rush order correctly. So it's important to make sure you use that heat up order correctly. I called it a rush order, but it's called the heat up order. So make sure you time that correctly because that can make a huge difference in how quickly the mission can go by. Finally, moving down really to the last set of buttons here. This is going to be your AP as well as your skills. So you tap on the skills in order to activate them. Very basic stuff. So that is the battle menu. Let's go ahead and head out of here, and then we're going to talk about job classifications. So if we tap this top button, this gets us out of the simulator. So job classifications are given, or they're indicated by the icon in the top left for the character. Or I'm sorry, on the top right. So as you can see, my Eve here has this little green icon on the top right, and that indicates that she's a healer. You can also see it on the top left right under the name. So you see the 5-star, then there's the name next to it. Right under that is the designation or the role for that character. So there's 5 different roles in this game. There's healer, sharpshooter, invoker, defender, and attacker. Now each one has a very specific set of stuff that is unique to that class. Lately they've been doing this kind of weird thing where classes have been kind of meshing with each other, or the character's listed as an invoker but has like healing capacity. So it's getting a little bit more mixed nowadays, but on average there's a certain meaning for every single class. So we'll go over the classes one by one. The first one, just like this Eve here, is going to be a healer. Now the whole point of healers is to pretty much stay away from the battlefield, away from the enemy, and then just keep supplying the party with health. Now there's a lot of good things that are only accessible to healers, with the big one being the revival ability. So certain characters, and I won't go through all of them here, you're going to have to look at like a list of all the characters and kind of see which ones do revival. But characters like Joshua here have revival. Characters like Blue Star Reyna have revival attached to them, and then the one that I have is actually going to be New Year's Raimi, has revival attached to the rush. So that's something that's very specific to healers. Again, the whole point of them is to stay away from the battle, to heal you, to buff you up, to provide rush revivals, things like that. So healers are mainly just staying in the back, doing as much damage as possible from afar and making sure that the party doesn't die. That's their main job. The next thing is, or the next class we're going to go into, are sharpshooters. So sharpshooters have this little icon in the top left. You can see it. It's like a little gun in a blue circle. So that indicates that they're a sharpshooter. Now the whole point of sharpshooters, on average, again, it gets a little different based on the character, Sharpshooters build up hit count, which can be very important because a lot of characters provide additional buffs when the hit count is above a certain number. Now again, I'm not going to go into all the characters that have it, but a lot of them say when hit counter is above 100, everyone gets attack plus 20%. Or when hit count is above 500, rush damage increases by 50%. Something like that. The whole point of sharpshooters is that, again, they stay away from the battlefield similarly to healers do, but they're dealing a crazy ton of damage using guns, using bows and arrows, using launchers, and their main idea is to build up that hit counter, making sure that any bonuses that come from the hit counter are being applied. So if you play as a sharpshooter, you're staying again away from the enemy, not super close to them, and you're going to be just shooting them, building up that hit counter, making sure that it doesn't disappear in case like your attackers, your defenders, your invokers, in case they get drawn away from the battle or they're retreating or something. You as the sharpshooter keep that hit count going. You keep it going up. That way you maintain the bonuses and you can get the mission done more quickly. You can do more damage. So sharpshooters, in my opinion, are mainly used to stack up that hit counter. They're not really a big source of damage, but by keeping that hit counter up, it keeps all the bonuses that activate by keeping hit count up. So that is the main role for sharpshooters, in my opinion, is keeping hit count up. The next class that we're going to go into is Invokers. So let's use our Phys here. Why not? So Invokers are indicated by the little rod in a purple sphere that you can see in the top left there. The whole point for Invokers is to cast magical damage, or to be able to use magical spells that get us closer to an elemental break. Now, elemental break is one of the best combat mechanics, and it's definitely going to be something you plan your strategy around, but just know that Invokers, their main thing is to do elemental damage of a specific type. So let's just say the enemy is weak to lightning. You're going to want to bring in an Invoker that has a lot of lightning associated with their attacks. And the reason for that is that Invokers tend to have a high intelligence stat. So for Phys, for example, his intelligence stat is 114. The higher the intelligence stat is, the more your magical special skills will do damage to the enemy. So Invokers, their main thing is to have high intelligence in order to deal massive amounts of elemental damage to the enemy. That is the main point of Invokers, in my opinion. Now, moving on to the next class, we're going to talk about Defenders. So like the Edge Maverick here, the whole point of Defenders is that they have a high HP count and they have a high defense count. So let's open up Edge's stat page. You can see his HP is around 11,500, and then his defense stat is around 15,000 or 1,500. So the whole point of Defenders is that they're going to essentially be a wall for the other characters. They're going to attract the enemy to them. That way the enemy just keeps hitting the defender, staying away from the healers, staying away from the sharpshooters, letting the attackers do their thing. The whole point of the defender is to have a high HP and a high defense, so that way they can take the beating while the other characters are doing their job of building hit count, making sure nobody dies, making sure that you're doing that elemental damage to get to that elemental break, or if you're an attacker, making sure you're just doing straight damage. So the whole point of Defenders is to act as a distractor, to be right in front of the enemy's face, directing all the attacks to them, because again, with that high defense stat and with that high HP, they're built to take lots of damage, and that's the whole point of the Defender, is to be right on the front lines protecting everyone else. The last class that we'll go into is the final class, actually, which is an Attacker. Now, an Attacker is represented by that red circle that you can see in the top left with the 3 swords coming out of it. And the whole point of an Attacker is to be on the front lines doing crazy tons of damage. Usually, Attackers also provide a nice buff to the whole party, giving something like attack plus 20%, giving something like increase the amount of rush that you build by like 3% every 3 seconds, something like that. So the whole point of Attackers is to beef up the rest of the party, making sure that their attacks are more powerful, making sure that you're being on the front lines, being able to just, again, crash damage with a regular melee attack or with regular special skills. So the Attacker unit, which is probably the favorite unit out of everyone playing this game right now, out of all the different roles, is mainly to just boost the party's attack, and that's really important because the more you boost their attack, the more that you boost their intelligence, the faster you're able to get through these missions and the faster you collect those rewards. So that's just a brief overview of all the job classifications. Again, it gets a little muddy when it comes to some of the newer units, because some of the newer units provide additional services. So for example, Christmas Maria can double up as both a sharpshooter and an attacker because she has a super high multiplier, or a super high percentage bonus for her rush. So lots of characters nowadays have multiple different functions, but generally that's what the different roles do. Now, let's go ahead and show you some of the things you should be paying attention to before you hop into the battle. So let's go ahead, go to the events, and then why not? Let's pick the Sakura Wars one, and let's go to the hardest difficulty, which is going to be the one right in the center there. Now, there's a lot of information that's presented to you before you go into battle. So this is like your main prep screen before you hop into battle. And the first thing you should be looking at is going to be this top right button. Let me see if I can highlight it there. There you go. It's highlighted. Now, this is the boss information sheet. Now, this tells you everything you need to know about the boss, essentially. You know what type of boss it is. So certain weapons or certain characters do better against certain types. So in this case, this enemy is a mecha. So having weapons that deal more damage to mechas is going to be better in this case. So after the type or the class, so it could be a lot of different things. It could be like bird. It could be like ocean animal, something like that. It could be a divine being. So based on that, you're going to try and change your weapons. Again, try and match it so that it's dealing more damage to the enemy. Now, this next part here, right underneath that, I'd argue is the most important part to pay attention to, and this is the elemental weaknesses of the enemy. Now, we've been talking a lot about elemental break, and we'll finish up the whole topic on it later, but what you want to do in order to reach that elemental break is hit the enemy with attacks that it's weak to, and you're going to do that based on the elements that it's weak to. So in this case, anything that it's weak to has the green text around it. Anything that it's just normal damage has white text. And anything that it's resistant to has red text. So for this example here, this enemy is weak to fire attribute, ice attribute, and darkness attribute, and normal attribute to every other element. If we go to a different enemy, let's just say we did this quest. Or let's actually pick this one. This is going to be a better example. So if we hit here, so this enemy is only weak to fire and lightning, and it's resistant to everything else. Now, the reason that it's important to be able to look at that screen is because you want to be hitting for weakness consistently. Hitting for weakness consistently increases your chance of getting that elemental break. It increases the amount of damage that you're doing by, I think, about 2.5 is the amount of damage that you get from using an elemental weakness. So it's very important to pay attention to the enemy's elemental weakness when you can. Again, this is really going to be based around what characters you have, which characters you feel comfortable with, and do you have the elemental weapons for that different type. So, after the elemental weaknesses, the next thing is going to be status weaknesses. Now again, red means resistant, white means normal, and then green means weak to. In this case, the enemy is normally resistant to being frozen and being poisoned, and it's heavily resistant to paralysis, silence, curse, and I actually don't know what that last one is, to be honest. I've never actually paid attention to the status ailments to really know. So, that's just the status weaknesses there. Again, I don't really pay attention to those because they don't usually change up how I go into these battles. The last thing there is the outrage meter. So after how many minutes the opponent goes into outrage. And outrage is a state where the enemy is just super strong. They are likely gonna kill all of your characters. So you want to try and defeat the enemy before it hits that outrage point, because once they're outraged, it becomes a lot more difficult to take out opponents. So that is the boss information screen. Again, very important stuff on that boss information screen. I check it every single time before I go into a mission for the first time. The next thing that's listed is going to be pretty much the mission details. So it has the mission name, it has how much stamina it's going to cost, which is represented by that 20 yellow. It has the monster level, so how difficult are the enemies going to be. In this case, the monster level is 132. And then lastly, the number of stages, or how many consistent fights are you going to have to do to complete the mission. In this case, it's 3. Under that are the items that you could obtain from this mission. So you can obtain, it's usually an accessory, a hammer to level up the event weapon, and then the farmable exchange items. So in this case, those little pictures, those are farmable exchange items. Underneath that are a list of characters that, if you have any of them, are going to give you an additional bonus at the end of the battle. So as you can see, I have the Snowflake character, which is that blonde character. You see the little orange text underneath her. That means I'm going to be getting a bonus just because I own that character. Just because I have them as part of my roster, I'm going to get an additional bonus at the end of the battle. Underneath that are going to be the different enemies you fight. Really, I don't find this to be too particularly relevant. The biggest thing you're going to have to pay attention to is what the boss you're fighting is going to be. And again, there's a whole boss information tab for that. So that is the boss screen. Now, going on to, let's do single player for now, just as an example. Now, picking an assist character, really this is going to be based off of the party that you're going in with. So let's just say you have a lot of attackers, you have a healer, a sharpshooter, you're going to want a defender. You're going to want someone to just pretty much take care of the rest of your team. So in this case, let's just pick the U, because I don't have a lot of good defenders. So I'll have the U take the damage while I have the Raimi heal, and then I'll have the Kasumi and the Makoto doing lots of damage. So that's how you pick an assist character. You're going to pick it based around what the other characters in your party are. Usually I like to have a defender as the assist character, because if you're going solo into a mission, you're only controlling one character. The rest of the characters are controlled by AI, and usually I just use a defender just to take all the hits while I do all the damage as a player character. So I usually pick a defender. If you need something different, by all means, pick whatever you need. Before we go into the battle, you hit this character information screen. So this is going to show every single character that's going in, whether you're doing a solo player or a multiplayer. You're going to get a lot of information on all the characters that are going in. You're going to notice which roles they have. So you're going to know that I've got 1 healer, 2 attackers, and 1 defender going in. This is pretty important because for composition reasons, you don't want to be going in with 4 of the same class. That's usually really, really bad. You don't want to go in with 4 attackers. You don't want to go in with 4 defenders. You don't want to go in with 4 healers. So being aware of the classes, again, kind of knowing what each one does, you don't want to run into a battle with just one class. You want to mix it up a little bit. So in my opinion, the best team composition, if you don't know the characters, is going to be 1 attacker, 1 defender, 1 sharpshooter or an invoker just to keep up that hit count, and then finally a healer just to make sure that everything works out okay. In case you're getting damaged really badly, they'll be able to bring you back up. So that's like my usual team composition if I don't know the other characters, if I don't know their specific like details, talents, battle skills, things like that. That's usually the composition I like to go in with. But really you want to stay away from any 4 of any one role, because that usually doesn't mix very well. The best that I could see mixing with it is maybe like 4 defenders, but 4 of any other class usually doesn't work out super well. So that's the first information you get from this character screen. You also get to see what level the character is at. So as you can see in the top left there, you see 6 stars next to all of the characters' names, or I'm sorry, right below all the characters' names. And that's important because it kind of lets you know how serious that character is, or how serious that player is going to be with all the enemies going on. On average, you want to have all those characters be 6-star, just because if you're going into a mission, you want to go the best that you can, and 6-star is the way that you know all their stats are pretty much almost at their highest. So knowing that the character is level 6 is just good information so that you know the player character is taking that character seriously. They're going in with a really good character, so that way you increase your chance of winning. Right below that are going to be the assist characters. So as you can see, it's like tiny little character squares with characters in them. That's going to be the assist character. Really, that's really specific information. You have to know what each assist character does in order for that to matter. The most important part is that there's someone there, because having an assist character is going to increase your chances of proccing like rush bonuses, things like that. So really, if you're going in, you don't know what the assist character does, just make sure that they have one there. If they don't have one there, it's going to be like, maybe this could potentially not be as fast as it could be. So make sure there's always an assist character there if possible. Next to this assist character, there's going to be all the little elemental circles there, and those show all the elemental attacks that the character has going for it. So for example, the New Year's Raimi has an ice attack at the very least, the Kasumi has a wind and a lightning attack, the Makoto has a fire attack, and the Yu has a lightning attack. Now when that button is glowing, just like it is for New Year's Raimi and for Makoto, that means that that enemy or the boss is going to be weak to that particular element. So even without looking at the boss screen, we know that we're going in with 2 characters that have elemental weakness against the enemy, because New Year's Raimi has some sort of ice imbuement, and then Makoto has some sort of fire imbuement or fire special attack. So when that is glowing, that is a good sign, because you want to make sure as much as possible all the characters in the party have that elemental weakness against the enemy. It's not a requirement, but again, it helps with that elemental break, which we'll be going into soon. Right below that, you can see the max limit break for the character, which is the very bottom left number right above the equipment. And again, that just lets you know how serious the person or the pilot or the person who's playing that character is taking this. You want that usually to be at 10, meaning that that character has been maxed out. They have almost no further stat increase bonuses that could apply. So that's what that 10 represents. It just represents like how strong that character is in comparison to how strong they could be. Are they at the maximum amount of limit break? So that's what that bottom left number is. On the bottom right number, it usually shows the character's level. Now, the one thing to know about this is that if it's yellow, so like New Year's Reimi, the Kasumi, the Yu Narukami, those are all yellow level 70s. And what that means is that the character has been max seeded. That means not only are they like max limit break, max level, they have all these seeds pumped into them that increase their maximum stat value. So for example, like attack, guard, intelligence. So when it's yellow, that's better. It means the character has been max seeded. They've been brought up to pretty much their highest potential. So to know if they're at the highest potential, they have to be 6-star, level 70, and then have a 10 limit break. That's how you know that they've pretty much pushed that character to the highest extent, that there is no further increase in stat bonus for that character. Lastly, below that, you can see the equipment for all the characters that are going in. Now, this is very specific. Really, you just want to keep track of your own equipment, especially if you have like an elemental weapon going in. You want to keep track of your own equipment rather than all the allies' equipment, because there's just so much equipment. There's so many different accessories. Really, we want to focus on your character and making sure you're piloting them the best, as opposed to what else everyone else is playing. You just want to know the general trends, like are they a defender? Are they max limit break? Are they going in with elemental weakness? So knowing their equipment, I don't usually find to be relevant as long as the person playing them is good at that particular character. So that's the main thing I look for when I look at the character screen before going into battle. Now let's head back to the simulator, and then we're going to talk about elemental break. So let's go to the battle simulator here. Let's go in with no one for now. Okay, and we'll go into the battle simulator. Now, elemental break is a very unique part of Star Ocean Anamnesis' battle system. So what elemental break is when you hit an enemy enough times with an element it is weak to. So for example, if the enemy is weak to fire and you keep hitting with fire attacks, it's going to trigger something called an elemental break. During an elemental break, that enemy is stunned for upwards of 20 seconds, I think, is the maximum amount it could be stunned for. But during that elemental break, the enemy is stunned, and you essentially just keep hitting the enemy, knowing that there's going to be no resistance. They are not going to be fighting back. They're not going to be like poking at you, anything like that. So as long as that elemental break is active, which is shown by like a bunch of stars, like a bunch of confusing stars floating around the enemy's head, once that's active, you know this is your time to attack. The enemy's defenses, I think, are weakened. I could be wrong about that. I just know that during the elemental break, you're really going to want to be hitting that enemy as much as possible. So let's try and trigger it here. Now, one of the things to note about the elemental break is that you have to keep hitting the enemy with special attacks. So there you go. Or I'm sorry, Elements Burst is what they call it here. But once you activate it, in order to maintain that Elements Burst, you have to keep hitting the enemy with special attacks. If for some reason you stop, if for some reason you get interrupted or you stop attacking the enemy, it's going to revert back to normal. And in the very hard missions, it actually goes into Outrage, which is that very strong like enemy being there to attack you. They're likely gonna one-hit kill you, things like that. So once you start that elemental break or the elements burst, you have to keep hitting them with special attacks. So let me try and trigger it one more time. So there it is. So we see the elemental break or the elements burst, whatever you want to call it. And all we got to do is just keep smashing skills into the enemy. That's going to make that elemental burst last longer. Once I stop my barrage, as you can see, it just comes back and it goes into Outrage. So once you see that Elements Burst come up, you're going to do whatever it takes to make sure you're able to keep hitting that enemy with special skills between you and the rest of your party members. Now, the best way to hit Elemental Break for an enemy is to imbue your characters with certain elements. So let's head back to that Sakura Wars event. And this is probably the most important part when it comes to selecting weapons for a character, is which elements are available to that character. So if we go here, let's go single player mode. Why not? Again, this is just to show you. I'm not actually going to go fight the enemy right now. So on this screen, again, it shows you all the elemental weaknesses. Does that character have an element the enemy is weak to? But again, to build up that elements burst or elemental break, whatever you want to call it, you're going to want to see what elements are available to the character through weapons. Now, this is a very important part, is that weapons can give you elemental imbuement, meaning that all the attacks from that character are going to be of this element unless it's a magic skill. Certain magic skills are inherently one type of element. So for example, Halloween Eve, all her attacks are inherently fire-based. If it's casting, if it's magic, it's usually stuck to that element. However, if it is just a special attack, it's not casting, you don't see any magical symbols come up whenever they activate the skill, likely you can still imbue that skill with an element. Now, the way you imbue a character with an element is by choosing the weapon, and let's say I wanted to have the enemy weak to fire. Let's say the enemy is weak to fire. What you can do is essentially hit this filter button right here and filter out only for that element. So remember that that enemy was weak to fire. Let's set it to fire. So we have one fire sword, and then what we do is we just equip it. That just means we're switching the weapons between the characters. And then when we go back to the mission, when we go back to the mission, you can see now that Kasumi has Fire Elemental next to her assist character. And again, you want to tailor the weapon so that it's what the enemy is weak to, because having an elemental weapon will build up the gauge, like the internal gauge that activates that element's burst or the elemental break. And again, during that elemental break, you can do crazy amounts of damage. So always try to match your weapon to the enemy's weakness. And that is probably my most important advice, my most important piece of advice whenever a new weapons banner comes out. Does it give some sort of elemental imbuement? Because if it does, it can really help a character. It can really make you more valuable as a party member to have those special imbuements. So just keep that in mind, that the best way to hit that elemental break is by giving your character a weapon that the enemy is weak to. Again, you can filter to make sure you can see whatever weapons you have in that class that are available to you for certain types of elements. Now, this is why it becomes important to be good at multiple characters that use multiple different weapons, because there's like one-hand sword characters, great sword characters, gun characters, bow characters, and sometimes you have a weapon that provides an imbuement that the enemy is weak to, but it's on a weapon you don't usually use. So for example, my Raimi has an ice bow. I don't have an ice sword. So in this case, I'd want to go with the Raimi because the Raimi has an ice bow and the enemy is weak to ice. So just use Raimi. So that's why you want to be good at quite a few different characters that have different types of weapons, because you always want to be hitting for that elemental weakness. Again, that makes you more valuable as a party member. All right, so let's go into the next part of this tutorial, which is rush order, or when everyone's got their rush active, who goes first? Now, if we go to the battle simulator again, so really what you base this off of is what are the classes of all the characters that are going in with. So there's that, and then you also want to pay attention to the specific percentages that their rush gives them. So let's take a look. So if it loads here, let's go ahead and give everyone max rush. All right, so again, it's going to be based on composition. So in general, what you want to have in terms of your attack order is going to be healers rush first, and then usually like invokers or sharpshooters, then defenders, and then finally attackers go at the very end. That is generally what you should be doing, just because of how much attack stat that particular character has. So healers obviously have the worst attack stat, whereas attackers have the highest attack stat. So you want to generally have that order again of healer, sharpshooter, or invoker, the defenders, and then the attackers. That's just generally what it should be. The other thing that you're going to tailor this around is what is the percentage of damage that the rush is going to give that person. Now that was a lot of words, so let's just take a look at the Kasumi. So the Kasumi's rush bonus, again, I can highlight over, I can just hold over it like that. It shows you what the rush combo attack is, and then it actually shows you attack times whatever percent. Now you want to have the people with the highest percentage go last. So in this case, Kasumi's attack is multiplied times 4,500%. The Raimi only has times 4,000. Okay, so not only does the Raimi have a weak attack stat, but the rush is also going to be a weaker percentage. Whoops, that was an accident. So we talked about this a little bit in the friendship guide, but remember that if your assist character comes to help you, that can give you upwards of 100 additional rush bonus. All right, looking at the Makoto, it's times 4,500. Looking at the Yu Narukami, it's times 4,500. So pretty much what that means is that the Reimi should be going before everyone else. So that's the other thing you're going to want to tailor this around, is that sometimes certain characters have a higher attack percentage than attackers. So for example, Christmas Maria has a rush bonus of 5,500%. That's going to be higher than the Kasumi. So usually when I'm in a party with a Christmas Maria, I let that Christmas Maria go last. Even though I'm an attacker and usually I go last, I know that Christmas Maria has a higher percentage than me, so I let them go last. So it's going to be tailored again around what the job classification is and what the percent bonus for that character's rush is going to be. So those are the two main things that you look for when it comes to picking your rush order. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about is choosing an assist character. And the way that you add an assist character is going to be by going to the equipment. So we'll go to characters in the bottom left. Then we're going to go to the second one, which is equipping weapons, accessories, and assist characters. You're going to pick the character that you want to equip an assist character to. And then right below that character's picture where it says assist, you're going to hit that. Now, the only assist characters you can have are essentially 6-star and level 70. They have to be brought up to that maximum amount in order to equip them as an assist character. So you might have to give some augmenting crystals, some experience crystals in order to bring them up to that in order to use their assist. So just keep that in mind. There are requirements before you can even use a character as an assist. Now, usually what I do when it comes to determining which assist character I bring in is going to be based on that specific character. So, for example, if I know that character has skills that cost a lot of AP, I'm going to usually want to use an assist character that lowers the AP cost of skills, things like that. So, in order to pay attention to which characters give what skills, there is an assist page. So, I'll go ahead and throw the link below. But this is essentially the assist page, and it shows you what a lot of different characters give. So, for example, Albel gives, when you use his assist, gives attack plus 100% and defense minus 50%. Summer Edge is going to give attack plus 80% and recovers 15 HP every 3 seconds for 20 seconds. So you're going to want to tailor which sort of assist character you bring based on that specific character you're going to be using, because different characters require different things. Some require AP reduction, some of them are really beefy attackers, so you're going to want to boost their attack or the amount of damage that you do. Some of them are going to increase critical hit chance, which can be important because some enemies have a crazy high defense, and remember that critical hits ignore enemy defense. So increasing critical hit chance is going to be super important for certain characters. So I'll go ahead and throw this link in the description below, but this is what I use in order to reference which assist character I should be bringing in. Again, it's going to be based on the character, what you know about them, how to best pilot them, and that's when you're going to pick your assist character. So let's head back here. So for example, I know that my Futaba, her skills all cost a crazy ton. So let's put this back to Joker, and let me go to Futaba's page. So go Futaba, go assist. I'm sorry, this is what I want to show you. So look at all her skills. 23 cost, 37 cost, 21 cost. Those are all pretty high, especially since after her first skill, she essentially makes all her skills cost almost twice as much. So what I wanted for her is to give her assist character that decreases AP. So if we look at my assist character, I have her equipped with the Summer Maria. And if you hold down on that character, it lets you know what their assist is. Now, I can read this, but it's essentially AP reduction minus 60% for 20 seconds. So usually I use it during like an elemental break to push out more damage, to do more skills, things like that. So you pick the assist character based around the character needs of the character you're piloting, or the character that you're going to go into the battle with. So that's pretty much everything that I want to talk about in regards to the battle system, things you should know. We talked about a lot of different things. So we talked about the battle screen. We talked about the different roles or the different job classifications, things that you should be looking for when you go into the battle. So looking at that prep screen, knowing what element the enemy is weak to, knowing how to equip certain weapons that give you that elemental weakness. We talked about how to read the character select screen, so knowing what roles the characters have. Are they at the maximum amount of stats that they can have? What weapons are they going in with? What assist characters? So lots of information that you're given right before the battle. We talked about elemental break, how to access it, knowing that you have to keep hitting them with skills to keep that elemental break active, and I think, correct me on this if I'm wrong, can be upwards of 20 seconds. We talked about rush order, so knowing that you should be going in the order of healer to sharpshooter, sharpshooter invoker to defenders to attackers, or based on the percentage damage of their rush attack. So we talked about that. And then finally we talked about choosing an assist character, which assist character fits each character best. So it was a lot of information. If you do need to come back and watch this video multiple times, skip to certain things, I'll try and put the timestamps in the description below. But with that being said, that's the end of this video. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I'd be happy to answer when I have the time. If you'd like some off-hours help to ask me some questions, definitely join my Discord in the bottom right corner there. And feel free to just tag me in there, just ask me about it. I don't have a Star Ocean Anamnesis community building yet, but if you'd like to be part of that, just let me know and I'll make a channel. But with that being said, that's the end of this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, until next time, take it easy.